Hello. Thank you all so much for joining us today. At Authors Republic, we always get the question from our users on how to best market and promote their audiobook. And so that is why today we're very happy to have Evan from StoryOrigin joining us. Evan is an expert on book promotion and he runs StoryOrigin, which is a cross-promotional marketing tool for authors. And before we get started with today's Q&A, and as others continue to join, we wanted to get a sense of where you all are in your book marketing journey. So we're going to put a quick poll on the screen, just a couple of questions, and we'll give a minute or so for you to answer. But just want to see how many of you are already familiar with StoryOrigin and how many of you already have a book that you've published, or you might be in the early stages and not quite there yet. So we'll give a little bit more time on this poll. And also, while you're answering those questions, we will have the Q&A open. So please feel free as questions come up to submit your question there. And we'll have some time to answer them during the webinar as well. Right. So I think we've given a decent amount of time now on that welcome poll. So maybe we want to close that and kind of see what responses we got. Okay. And it looks like all right, it looks like the poll has a bit of everything. So we have some people who have already used StoryOrigin, and some people it's their first time. Quite a few people it's their first time, but a lot of people who have already published an audiobook. And even for those of you who have not yet, something in terms of the marketing with your book is getting started even before you publish can be a really important time. So I think like we've had enough time for people to join now. So let's get into it. And Evan, thank you so much for being here today and to answer our questions and the questions that our users may have. And it seems like a good jumping off point may be the beginning. So could you tell us what made you want to build StoryOrigin?
Yeah, sure. So, uh, I used to write short stories back in high school, always had an interest in writing. And then in college, I got interested in tech and entrepreneurship and worked for a few years. And then I wanted to get back into writing and at the same time build tools for writers. So I went around and talked to a bunch of authors and said, what tools are you using? What's out there? And I heard, I use this for building my mailing list. I use this other service for finding reviewers. I use another service for creating universal book links. I use some combination of, Google Forms and Facebook groups to arrange newsletter swaps with other authors. I have a different service for building my website. I keep this spreadsheet for distributing my audiobook promo codes. I use email and Word docs to keep track of beta copies. And I was like, okay. I'll stop there. That's a lot, right? And so I wanted to build one thing that simplified all of this process because, I was talking to authors and they had 8 different services, 5 different spreadsheets, do all this stuff. And you're constantly doing all this context switching between sort of the business side of writing and then focusing on writing and trying to focus on the business side and having them between all these different services and spreadsheets while at the same time maintaining an entire world, an entire story in your head can be quite the challenge, right? So, I set out to make StoryOrigin simplify that whole process. So StoryOrigin does all those things that I just mentioned. It's from building your mailing list, finding reviewers, cross promoting with other authors, building your website, getting feedback on beta copies. It's sort of a one-stop shop for authors.
Okay. And given all of that, I mean, I think being an indie author, there's so many things you're trying to juggle, just trying to figure out what marketing channels are where you're going to find your readers and how many are out there these days can be a difficult question to answer. So given, the current marketing landscape, what would you say are the most valuable channels for authors to consider?
Yeah, if you look at the marketing landscape, basically there's a few different things going on. So you've got ad platforms like Amazon and Facebook. where you can pay for impressions. And those platforms and those ad platforms are all based on bidding. So over time, as more authors enter the market and they're bidding on those same sorts of keywords or bidding for those same impressions from those same readers, the costs increase over time, and it makes it really difficult, especially for authors that are just starting out and maybe only have one book, and they're not able to rely on having a huge backlist where, they're selling one book, and they can sell it at a loss on the ads because they know that some percentage of those readers are going to go on to buy book two, book three, book four, etc. So you've got those ad platforms, and those are great, but again, like you have to fine tune and do a lot of stuff to make those work well for you. And then the other thing in terms of the marketing landscape is social media, right? It used to be that you just posted and then things would just show up in people's timelines based on timestamps. Now it's all algorithmically driven, right? So if you post something, only a small percentage of your audience is going to see it, and that's dependent upon how many people are engaging with your other content. And so, I read a post from someone the other day that said, I spent years building up my Facebook page to 3,000 followers, and when I make a post, only 30 people see it. So it can be really disappointing to see those results when you put in so much time and effort into it. And so really the solution there is this archaic technology at this point called email, right? Where when you send an email out, there's no algorithm that's going to just delete your email from people's inboxes. When you have that email list, also you have that direct point of contact with your audience, that you own that mailing list. So if for whatever reason you're using an email service provider like MailerLite or MailChimp or something like that, and they go out of business, you can just take you can take your list of emails and go over to another email service provider and just start sending emails that way. And that gives you a direct point of contact with your readers that you don't really have when you are doing things like social media or advertising for impressions and stuff like that. You just don't have that direct point of contact. So, yeah, email's the way to go, I would say, for a lot of authors, both new and authors who have a huge backlist.
And with email, something that can be challenging is building the list. How do you, if you don't already have an email list, knowing it's a valuable channel, how do you get started on an email list and reaching your readers?
Right. Well, first you have to give the readers a reason to want to sign up to your mailing list in the first place, right? So I generally recommend, for fiction authors at least, you want to give them a story when they sign up to your mailing list. That provides a great enticement to readers because that's how they get value from you as an author, is they want to read your stories. And so give away a free story to anyone that signs up to your mailing list. If you're a nonfiction author, it might not be a story. It might be like a workout regimen or some worksheets or some sort of diary kind of a thing. So uh, you can come up with different ideas for what you would use to entice people to get on your mailing list. But either way, whatever it is, I would call this your reader magnet. So it's the thing that you give away for free when someone signs up to your mailing list.
And
And yeah, go ahead.
okay. Would you say typically an author could utilize like having an author website for those sorts of things for people to find them and then is that, a good way to have those in a place to have those magnets?
Yes, absolutely. So I was just about to turn there. So the once you've got that reader magnet sign up page, so you're going to create a sign up page. You can use a service like StoryOrigin to create that landing page for that reader magnet. And then StoryOrigin automatically handles the file delivery and any reader tech support if readers run into any issues with getting that file onto their whatever their preferred reading device is. Um, and or you could build these pages yourself using your own website and like linking it with Google Docs or or Dropbox or something like that. StoryOrigin sort of just simplifies that whole process for you, makes it super intuitive and easy. Either way, once that you've got that landing pages, there are a few different places that you would want to be promoting that reader magnet landing page. So one would be putting the link for that reader magnet up on your website, making it visible so that when readers come to your website, they can see, oh, hey, I can go get this author's, get this story for free, and sign up to the mailing list. The other thing that you can do is put the link for that reader magnet at the back of your books. So if you've, written, let's say you're writing books in a series, you write book one and you've written a prequel short story to book one, and that's what you're using as a reader magnet. Put the link for that reader magnet at the end of book one. And so readers that read book one and say, I really love these characters. I love this universe. I want to explore this in more depth. They will click on that link to get that short story about the backstory of those characters because they love them. And that those subscribers will be your best subscribers because they've already fallen in love with your world and they want to explore them more in depth. And then the other thing that you can do to promote that reader magnet landing page as well is arrange cross promotions with other authors. So you can join group promos. Those are a cross promotion where you, me, and let's say 20 other authors who all write fantasy, we'll all list our books on a single landing page, and then we all drive our traffic to that landing page. And we can all be promoting our reader magnets. And so we will all grow our mailing lists together. The other type of cross promotion you can do with other authors is do a newsletter swap. So I'll agree to promote one of your books in one of my upcoming newsletters if you agree to promote one of my books in one of your upcoming newsletters. And we're not like sharing our subscribers, like our mailing lists with one another or anything like that. It truly is as simple as just give me the link to your book and I will drop like the book cover for your book and I will put the link to your book in my newsletter. So you're not actually sharing any subscriber information or anything like that when you're doing a newsletter swap. Uh, and so yeah, those cross promotions are growing super quickly because they are free, right? Like you and me, we don't have to pay each other to promote each other, right? Um, and then they are targeted. So when I want to grow my mailing list, like when I want to grow my mailing list, I'll arrange a newsletter swap with another author that's a fantasy author if I'm a fantasy author, right? So I know that the readers of that other author's newsletter are going to be interested in my book because we write similar things, right? And then they're not complicated. It's, as I mentioned, you're simply getting the link from the other author and dropping that link into your newsletter. So you don't need to figure out any sort of complicated like targeting systems or bidding strategies or design, like testing out, like A/B testing different graphics and advertisements and stuff like that. So, it's free, easy, and targeted. So cross promotions are something that have become a lot more popular over the years. And StoryOrigin helps you do that too. So you can find other authors' dates that they're sending out newsletters. You can find group promos that are going on with StoryOrigin and arrange or join those cross promotions.
Okay. And for an author who's new or doesn't have a fan base yet, do you have any tips for how they approach like a more seasoned author if they were doing it through StoryOrigin? Is that ever a concern, or is it a pretty open community where you don't have to worry about that sort of thing?
It is a very open community. So most of the authors that you will find on StoryOrigin, when they've got a mailing list of like 1,000 people, 2,000, 3,000 people, a lot of those authors started with 0 subscribers and started out on StoryOrigin and just requested newsletter swaps with other authors that had bigger audiences. And those authors are willing to accept accept swaps with authors with no mailing list because they were in their shoes probably not more than a few months ago necessarily. So it is sort of a pay it forward mentality in the community on StoryOrigin, where even if you've got 0 subscribers, you can still apply for newsletter swaps and group promos and stuff like that. Now, you still need to be planning to send out a newsletter. So you have your dates planned and stuff like that, but you can have 0 subscribers on your mailing list when you're getting started and still apply for stuff and you will be accepted.
Okay.
Not I can't say like with 100%, everyone's going to accept you for a newsletter swap or group promo or whatever, but there are very good chances that you can get started, in if you apply, someone's going to accept you for their cross promotions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, especially in this community, it makes sense that, other authors would want to lift up other indie authors and help all indie books, rise with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I mean, I can share real quick just some quotes from some authors if you'd like me to do a screen share
Yeah,
real quick.
feel free.
Yeah. So let's see. I will go over to StoryOrigin. Um, so I'm here on the StoryOrigin website. This is just on the home page. So since we're talking about building your mailing list, I'll go here to the read more. And then if you go down here, this is regarding list building on StoryOrigin. So, Amanda said she grew from 0 to 1,000, able to grow 1,200 in 18 newsletters, got over 400. This person, Bella went from 0 to 4,000. So starting with 0 people on your mailing list with StoryOrigin is definitely something that authors do frequently.
Yeah. Okay. And on that same sort of wavelength, as authors are building their email, let's say, should they be considering a welcome sequence or a certain frequency as they get started to?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I recommend authors when they are determining, how frequently they want to send out their newsletters. A lot of authors are hesitant to send out newsletters too frequently because they don't want to like bother people, which I totally understand. I have anxiety about sending newsletters to this day, even though I've been doing it for almost 7 years at this point. Like that anxiety doesn't necessarily ever go away. Um, but I will say, if you send less than once a month, there's a good chance that your subscribers will forget why they signed up to your mailing list. And it's the other day I got an email from someone and I was like, oh, I just emailed this person like it seemed like, uh just the other day and when I looked it had been 2 weeks ago, right? And we just get emails, so the velocity of emails we get is just so high. It's like an email once a month is not like is definitely not burdening people. Like it seems like forever ago in terms of email. So I recommend minimum sending once a month. Usually, authors that I've talked to have found that they have higher open rates and lower unsubscribe rates when they send twice per month. So, uh, even though, you might think, oh, the more I email, like the higher I'm gonna have a unsubscribe rate, or like people are gonna like be bothered by my emails. It's actually kind of the reverse. There's sort of a sweet spot where you want to send more like two times a month, or maybe even once a week. Uh, it's when you get into the territory of sending people newsletters literally every single day where you're gonna start to see like higher unsubscribe rates.
That makes sense. And when considering an email platform to use, can StoryOrigin work with, any different email platform, or are there some to keep in mind
Yeah.
that work better than others?
Yeah, so you can use any email service provider you want. StoryOrigin has integrations with various email service providers. Let's say you use MailerLite, you can integrate StoryOrigin with your MailerLite account so that when someone signs up to get your reader magnet on StoryOrigin, that reader's contact information is sent automatically over to your mailing list on MailerLite. But if you use an email service provider that StoryOrigin does not integrate with, that is totally fine. You can always just download a CSV of the signups that you've gotten from StoreOrigin and upload them to your email service provider, to MailerLite or MailChimp or what have you. A lot of authors nowadays have started looking at using Substack as well. Unfortunately, Substack does not have an API, so nobody can build an integration with Substack. This is not just a StoryOrigin doesn't have an integration with Substack problem. This is nobody can integrate with Substack. Um, but again, what you would do is you just download a CSV of the signups you've gotten from storage and upload those manually on Substack, and then you can just send newsletters to those people.
Okay. And are there any geographic restrictions for people to use StoryOrigin or anything like that, or is it open for everybody?
So StoryOrigin is available in any European country in the EU, Australia, the US, and many different countries. There are a few countries where StoryOrigin's the paid plan is not available just because StoryOrigin isn't registered in those countries. Um, so, but yeah, more than likely, StoryOrigin is available in your country. So,
Okay. All right. And we are getting some good Q&As from the attendees. So I might jump into a couple of those.
yeah.
Um, One is, what if I'm still writing my book? Should I wait until my book is completed before reaching out to anyone?
No. So I would recommend you start building your mailing list before you've even published your book. So if you're writing, let's say you're planning on writing, a book series like a trilogy or something, I would actually first write the reader magnet for that trilogy, write a prequel short story, and put up the sign up page on StoryOrigin, start arranging cross promotions, start building that mailing list now. That way, when you go and you publish book one, you aren't launching to crickets and then trying to figure out the marketing on the back end, right? You actually have an audience to launch to if you've already built up your mailing list using that reader magnet beforehand. So I would get started with writing a reader magnet and then building your mailing list and then launching your published books after. And the other benefit of building that mailing list first is that when you've built a mailing list, at least a few weeks ahead of your launch date of your paid books, you can ask those people that are on your mailing list if they'd like a free review copy of that book one that you're going to be launching. And that way you can get that book in the hands of readers, let's say 6 weeks before you publish, and then they'll have time to read it. And when the book launches, day one, you have people that will be ready to go and post reviews for it already on Amazon or Goodreads or BookBub or what have you. And so you can also use StoryOrigin's review copies feature to manage that review team for that book as well. So get started building that mailing list sooner rather than later. And the other thing that you can use it for is the beta copies feature as well on StoryOrigin. So you can invite people to beta read an early manuscript of that book one that you haven't launched yet. And readers can provide feedback. And the way that the beta copies feature works on StoryOrigin is a little bit interesting. So readers get access to just chapter one. And then after they've left feedback on chapter one, they can then unlocks chapter two, and then they can read chapter two. And so StoryOrigin, like the reason that I built that feature into StoryOrigin is I just heard from so many authors that were like, yeah, I gave someone my manuscript. Here's my whole Word doc with my book. And the person got back to me and they were like, thanks, that was a great book, I loved it. And you as the author are like, okay, but can you give me like a little bit more because I want to try to make the book better. And so StoryOrigin, the beta copies feature, readers have to leave feedback in order to unlock each next chapter of the book. And so you'll get much more fine-grained and detailed feedback. And you can provide those readers with critique guidance as well about like what you're looking for. Like, are there any boring scenes in this chapter, or what did you think about the dynamic between these two characters? You can provide them that guidance for their critiques as well, so you can really polish any parts of the manuscript that you weren't so sure about.
Okay, perfect. We did have a question about beta readers as well. So I think we got some really good detail on that. And another question is, are there a lot of children's book authors on StoryOrigin, and maybe just in general genre related, finding that person on StoryOrigin?
Rather than answering a specific question about a specific genre, I will go and show you how to check for yourself. So,
Perfect.
let me go over to StoryOrigin here. Um, and and you can do this even if you just sign up to StoryOrigin on the free tier. You don't need to sign up for a paid plan to start to check this stuff out. So you can sign up for a free account, go to the for authors section, and then browse newsletter swaps is what I would recommend going to. And then here is where you can enter tags. So you would enter like a children's tag. Um, and then you can see here are all the authors that have tagged their books as have tagged their newsletters as children's. And then these are the dates that they're sending their newsletters out. Here's how big their mailing lists are. And then you can just hit show more and keep scrolling through this list. And you can add additional tags if you want to sort of further refine that search. And then you can do the same thing if you go to browse group promos. You would just there enter tags, and that will filter down this list. So these are all of the upcoming group promos, the dates that they're running for, the related tags, what the title is, all of that stuff. So yeah, when it comes to any particular genre on StoryOrigin, I would say that is the best way to determine, are there other authors for me on StoryOrigin that I can arrange cross promotions with.
Okay, and while we're on screen sharing, we just got the question too. Um, is it possible to share on your screen an overview of how StoryOrigin works?
Um, I would say, if you're trying to figure out like how to get started on StoryOrigin, what I would recommend is, like I said, going to that for authors section that'll take you to your dashboard homepage here. And then I would personally start with building my mailing list if you have not done that already. So I'd hit build mailing list, and that will take you through like, here are the individual steps that you ought to uh, do on StoryOrigin to set up your account to start building your mailing list, all that stuff. But if you're just looking for like a more generalized overview of how StoryOrigin works, I would say just go to the homepage on StoryOrigin, and under this, one-stop shop for authors section, it really depends, because StoryOrigin, like, the unique value of StoryOrigin is truly that it is like a one-stop shop for to do so many things. And so it depends on what you as an author are most interested in. Like, do you just want to like track your daily word count? Let's say that you haven't even published a book, you're not planning to publish for a while still, you just want to track your daily word count. You can find an overview on like how the word count tracker works, by just hitting that segment we looked at earlier, and then this will tell you a little bit about it. Here's some snippets from authors that use this feature, and then you can see, here's how it works. Like, you see graphs of your daily word count. Here's what your goal is. Here's percentage completed, logging it, seeing a table, all that stuff. And then you'll see like a frequently asked questions as well. And on a lot of the pages, you'll also see a video tutorial of how that particular feature works as well.
Okay, thank you. And we're also getting some questions on direct selling, and how to direct sell and what e-commerce you can connect to. For example, can I use Square?
Yeah, so StoryOrigin, you can set up direct sales pages. They currently only work with Lemon Squeezy. So Lemon Squeezy is the payment processor in this case. And the reason, so, adding more integrations to the direct sales feature on StoryOrigin so that you can use different payment processors is on the very long to-do list. But I will say that I highly recommend authors check out Lemon Squeezy. The reason that I went with them as the first integration that StoryOrigin would provide for direct sales is that they act as the merchant of record. And so what does that mean? When you sell a book anywhere in Europe, on that first sale, you become liable for collecting and remitting sales tax. In Europe, it's called a VAT tax. You become liable on the very first sale of anything digital in the EU. Lemon Squeezy acts as the merchant of record. So when you make a sale of a book, Lemon Squeezy acts as the merchant of record. So they are the ones that become liable for collecting and remitting that sales tax. But if you're using something like Shopify or Square or Stripe or anything, pretty much anything else, you personally are the merchant of record. And so you are responsible for collecting and remitting those sales taxes. So that's why StoryOrigin currently only integrates with Lemon Squeezy, but adding others is on the very long to-do list for sure as well.
That makes sense. We're also being asked, what about driving physical book sales, or is StoryOrigin only for ebooks and audiobooks?
So StoryOrigin is mostly for ebooks and audiobooks. When you're setting up your universal book links on StoryOrigin, those are the pages where you can say where the retailers where your book is available. Um, you can put in like an Amazon link, and that could go to a paperback copy of your book on Amazon. StoryOrigin doesn't have any problem with that. So like you can still promote your paperback books using that universal book links feature as well.
Okay. All right. And another question, kind of back onto email, which I think is, given how valuable those can be for authors, there's a lot of questions about that too. So, is it a wise move to buy a mailing list? Somebody says they purchased a marketing package for video trailers and it came with an email list of over 2,000 emails.
I would not buy an email list. Those leads are not going to be warm to you. And depending on where those emails came from, what countries those people reside in, you may be breaking data regulations in those countries. If those authors have not consented, or sorry, if those readers have not consented to being on that mailing list. So you just want to make sure that you are you're collecting that consent when people sign up to your mailing list. And so StoryOrigin, when you're using the reader magnets feature for people to sign up to your mailing list, like StoryOrigin complies with GDPR, which is like the main regulation there, to say that you've collected consent from them to join your mailing list, etc. So yeah, I would not buy a mailing list. And in even if you were to use that mailing list, the unsubscribe rate that you'll get on the first email that you send out will likely be quite high. And that could cause problems for you with your email service provider. So, if you create an account with MailerLite or MailChimp or whoever, and your first email, you've got a ton of people marking you as spam, they have have a high complaint rate. um that could that email service provider could suspend your account. Now, that being said, the great thing about email, as I mentioned earlier, is if your account's suspended, you take the rest of your mailing list, and you just go to a different email service provider. But again, this is not something that you would want to do repeatedly. So yeah, always better to probably just start with building your mailing list, sort of starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when there's ways that you can do it within the community already rather than just buying a list from
Absolutely.
who knows where. So,
Absolutely.
and then given, Authors Republic and our audiobook background, there's a couple of questions from attendees asking about just general audiobook marketing. Is there anything with audiobook marketing strategies that's different or different streams with a newsletter or social, things like that they should consider?
Um, no, not so much. I mean, in terms of just like, arrange like promotion, all that stuff is, it's kind of applicable whether or not you're talking about ebooks or audiobooks. Um, but should we maybe talk about some like the audiobook specific features on StoryOrigin?
Sure. Yeah. That could
Yeah.
help answer this question a little.
Um, so I'll go back over to my dashboard again. When you go to that for author section, that'll take you to your author dashboard. Uh, we have, here are all the landing pages that you can create. So like I've got universal book links here. And so when I check out one of these book links, it'll take me to the landing page, and it shows me the retailers where that book is available. And so if I click on one of these, and I go to Amazon, it'll take me to the Amazon page for that book. And the thing that it does is it takes me to Amazon.com because I'm in the US. But if I were in Canada, it would take me to Amazon.ca, or if I was in the UK, Amazon.com. Or sorry, Amazon.co.uk, Australia, Amazon.com.au, etc. The same feature is also for Universal Audio Link. So you can set up Universal Audio Link pages. I have not created any on my account, but they work the exact same way. And then the other thing that you can do in regards to audio with StoryOrigin is you can distribute audiobook review codes as well. And so these are the codes that you get when when you produce through Authors Republic. You might get audiobooks.com codes, and you want to give those to readers that you think that might review the book. And so you give you can create a sign up page for those codes where readers can come and request a code from you, and they say where they would be planning to leave a review. So, Amazon, Goodreads, BookBub, etc. And then if they say that they're going to leave a review on one of those platforms, they would also leave the link to their reviewer profile from that platform, and you can check out their reviewer profile. So you know, if I get a request from someone and they say they're going to leave a review on Goodreads, and I write, let's say, steamy romance, and I see that this person has only ever reviewed cozy romance novels, I might decline that request to give them a code, because I don't want to give them a code and have them feel like they should be leaving me a review for a book that I think they're probably not going to like, because like it's steamy romance, not cozy romance.
Mhm.
And so and then the other thing that StoryOrigin does with those, when you're distributing those audiobook promo codes for reviews as well, is when listeners request those codes, you can see how many of those how many codes they've been approved for through StoryOrigin before, and how many of those review processes they've completed. So if they've been approved for 20 promo codes through StoryOrigin and they've only completed the review process for uh, you know, 5 of them, then you might say, okay, there's like a good chance that if I give this person my book for free, that they're not actually going to leave a review. And so StoryOrigin puts you in the driver's seat when it comes to who you want to be on that review team. And so all those features that I just talked about, with the being able to look at their reviewer profile links, being look at check their like completion stats, all that stuff also applies to ebook review copies as well. So that feature is sort of the same. You can have ebook review copies or audiobook promo code review copies that you're distributing, and you get to check out, reviewers' stats and profiles and stuff before approving them for getting a free copy from you.
Okay, thank you. And somebody else asked, is story origin useful for nonfiction?
Yeah, StoryOrigin as a tool, as a platform, it's totally genre agnostic. So you can create those reader magnet landing pages. You can build your website with StoryOrigin. You can, distribute review copies, audiobook promo codes, do all of that stuff with nonfiction as well. There's no limits there. Um, the one thing that I will say when it comes to cross promotion, nonfiction authors, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter whether or not you're looking at StoryOrigin or just across various Facebook groups or other platforms or anything like that. Nonfiction authors really just have not adopted cross promotion nearly as much as fiction authors. So, um, all the tools and infrastructure on StoryOrigin totally genre agnostic, but when you go and you search for cross promotions with other authors as a nonfiction author, you will probably not find as many options there.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason that is just for a lot of nonfiction authors, let's say you're writing a book about weight loss or something like that. Uh, Usually you're using that book as an upsell to upsell a training program or coaching or a course or something along those lines. And so usually those readers aren't going to buy multiple high value, ticket items like courses and coaching from multiple people. And so more on the nonfiction side, those authors really sort of want to own their audience a little bit more than fiction authors, because for fiction authors, you know, if I'm writing a fantasy book and you're writing a fantasy book, readers can read so much more than we could ever produce, that there's no real downside for me to promote another fantasy author, because probably there's at least a few months in between each one of my releases where I want to be sending newsletters and providing updates and staying engaged with my audience. And so one of the great ways that I can do that is by promoting other authors' books. That gives readers a reason to keep opening and clicking on my emails. Because if every email is just like, hey, still working on my book, I walked my dog this week, right? Like, they're going to stop opening your emails after a couple of times, right? Because they're not getting any value from it. But you can provide value to readers by sharing other authors' books, because readers are constantly looking for what's next on my list to read because you can read books so quickly, right? So yeah, highly recommend promoting other authors, especially as a fiction author.
Okay. And on the nonfiction line, still, somebody said that they write nonfiction professionally, but they're doing a fiction book for their own enjoyment. Is it a mistake to do both fiction and nonfiction that are unrelated?
No, I mean it's not a problem. You just have to recognize that you are going to be splitting your time between the two, right? And so there's not like economies of scale, right? But there are certainly many people, many authors who have both successful fiction and nonfiction books, right? So thinking about like Joanna Penn or Chris Fox, both of them write nonfiction books about writing and being an author and all of that stuff. But then they also are successful in the genres that they write fiction for. So you can absolutely do both. I just generally kind of think about it like if you're a restaurateur and you are, you own a pizza shop or something along those lines, like, and you want to open a second location, are you going to open another pizza shop or are you going to open a sushi restaurant? Because you're not going to get economies of scale if you open another sushi restaurant, right? The audience is going to be different. The way that you advertise is going to be different. Um, you're not going to have any overlap where those businesses can really help each other. And that's totally fine, right? There are entrepreneurs that do that and are successful doing that, like I have already mentioned. It just is more work.
Right, right. And as authors are kind of hearing this and considering their paths forward, do they need to have any sort of technical expertise to use Story Origin? Should they take that into consideration?
StoryOrigin is meant to be super easy to use. There are tutorials all across the website, across every single feature. You'll usually find a video tutorial that will show you exactly how to do what you're planning to do. Um, and nothing requires all that much technical expertise. Even building a website with StoryOrigin is incredibly simple. Pretty much any other site where you go to build a website, it's going to require at least some sense of design, if not like technical expertise in like design and stuff like that as well. StoryOrigin sort of handles all that part for you when you're building your website. StoryOrigin auto lays out the site for you. You just essentially say, "Here's the books I want on the page," and StoryOrigin goes, "Boom, here you go. Here's your website." So really does not require much expertise. And again, like there's video tutorials if you run into any issues. And failing that, you are always welcome to shoot StoryOrigin an email. Just go to the contact page on StoryOrigin. You'll see my face, you'll see my name, you'll see my email address. My inbox is always open. You can just send me an email directly, and I will help you out with problems as well.
Thank you. And I know we had touched a little bit on GDPR and everything earlier, but we did get a question about privacy concerns related to using the mailing list feature in StoryOrigin. They say some of my contacts would not like to have their emails on this platform.
So StoryOrigin is a one-way street. So when if you use an email service provider, like let's say you're using MailerLite or whatever, you don't need to take those subscribers and add them to StoryOrigin. Okay? It's only ever a one-way street from you get signups to your reader magnet on StoryOrigin, and those email addresses are added to MailerLite, but it doesn't flow in the opposite direction. So if you've already got, let's say, a couple of thousand people on your email list, you don't need to add those people to StoryOrigin or anything like that. It would only be that you get contacts added to your mailing list via StoryOrigin from requesting your reader magnet.
Okay. And we just got one question too of I have accumulated over 500 mailing lists, but when I publish my newsletter, it is mailed to only 380. Why is that?
I would
I
not be
wasn't-
able to say.
Okay, I wasn't sure if
I would not be able to say without more context. If you've got 500 people on your mailing list and a couple of hundred of them have hit unsubscribe in your newsletters, hit that unsubscribe link. on your email service provider, they might still show up as contacts on your mailing list, but they are unsubscribed. So it's only when you send a newsletter out, it's the email is only going to be sent to those contacts on your mailing list that are marked as subscribed. And those unsubscribed ones will not get your newsletter. So that is the most obvious thing that I could think of for why they would be seeing that.
Okay. And are authors still willing to collaborate with you if you don't have an email list or a newsletter?
Um, so you should still be planning to send out newsletters, but if you have zero subscribers, that's totally fine. So yeah, authors, like going back to what I was showing you earlier with the quotes from the authors on StoryOrigin that have started with literally zero subscribers on their mailing list and started building up their mailing list. Um, with StoryOrigin, yeah, you can apply for newsletter swaps and group promos even if there's zero people on your mailing list. You still need to be planning to send out newsletters, but if those emails get sent to literally nobody, that is fine. Still just send out that newsletter. And you should at least have one person on your mailing list, which is your own email address at the very least to test and make sure and see like you're getting the newsletters and all of that stuff. So even if you're the only person on your mailing list or your dog is the only person on your mailing list, like that is still totally fine to get started with applying for cross promotions on StoryOrigin. Yeah, and you can again go to StoryOrigin's homepage, go to that build mailing list segment, and go to the about section for that feature, and you'll see quotes from lots of authors who have gotten started with zero.
Yeah, fair point. If you can't sign yourself up for your own e-newsletter, how can you sign up anybody else?
Yeah,
Good starting point.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and we also were asked, is the website that you create in-house to Story Origin, or can you take it externally?
The website that you would build with StoryOrigin would be unique to StoryOrigin. It is really the only platform where you can take your website and take it to a different host is WordPress. Um, at least if we're talking about like major platforms here, you could take a WordPress site, all the assets for it, and move it over to a different host. Um, but other than that, like if you're talking about Wix or Squarespace or any of that, none of that stuff is portable. StoryOrigins is not portable either. But at the end of the day, you own the domain, right? So if you build your website, on StoryOrigin and, you know, uh, it's, www.readsherlockholmes.com. That's the example when I use on StoryOrigin. If your website is at www.readsherlockholmes.com, and you decide you want to build a new website with a different provider, like that is fine. You can just change on your registrar, change that domain from pointing to StoryOrigin, make it point to Wix or Squarespace or your WordPress host or wherever else. Like you own that domain. So that is one of the other benefits of using StoryOrigin is that all those landing pages that we talked about, the reader magnets, the universal book links, the direct sales feature, all that stuff can be hosted on your own domain. So at the end of the day, if you want to get off StoryOrigin for whatever reason, like you won't be locked into it because you can then instead have that page. You can just create a similar page on a different website provider.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to just quickly just show what the StoryOrigin website looks like. So you don't have to do this with your pages, right? But like, for example, here's my reader magnet. You'll see I can go to the StoryOrigin link where it's hosted on storyoriginapp.com. But then I've also created a custom link for it for my own domain. So if I go here, you'll see this is, at www.readsherlockholmes.com/freebie. And this is basically that StoryOrigin page, but removed all of the StoryOrigin branding and all of the colors and all of that stuff, hosted on my own domain at the specific link that I want to have it at. And you can do the same thing. So here's the website. So here's, my reader magnet. Here's all the books in my series. These are ones that are, here's my reader magnet. Here's the ones that are for direct sale. So we can check out that page real quick. I can see that I can buy it for $2.99. I would go, if I wanted to buy this, I would just put in my card details, all that stuff, and then I would buy it. And so yeah, you can sell directly from the website that you build with StoryOrigin. Um, and then you've got this nice little about section along with your social media links. And so yeah, to replicate all of this with like some combination of Shopify and like WordPress and and
Mhm.
you like use like Bitly for redirect links, all of that can be done with StoryOrigin's custom links feature.
Yeah, just the links alone can sometimes be challenging to collect.
Yes,
You have
for
your book
sure.
in multiple places, yeah. And given the importance of a newsletter, would you say it's enough to rely, excuse me, solely on a mailing list to promote your book, or would you suggest somebody still promote on social media and maybe try paid promotions?
I wouldn't recommend relying solely on your newsletter. It depends on what, your own sort of budget for your books is and what sort of genres you're writing in. And it also kind of just depends on whether or not you hit the lottery, right? Like, does your book just become a hit just sort of by luck, right? Um, so, I wouldn't say StoryOrigin is a replacement for doing advertising on Facebook or Amazon or anything like that. But having an email list is an incredibly integral part of your marketing strategy as an author. Um, because when you do ads on other platforms and you start to get readers of your book coming through various channels, if you get them to sign up to your mailing list, then you own that point of contact with them and you don't have to go back to the well every time you release a new book to let your audience know because they're signed up to your mailing list. You can just email them and say, "Hey, I've released a new book. Like, come check it out. It's available for sale, here, here, and here."
Mhm.
Um, you don't always have to rely on with each release, like needing to target the same set of people with your ads and stuff like that, because hopefully you've gotten a decent number of them on your mailing list. So it's not to replace those things, but it can reduce your costs and helps you build a relationship with your audience, which can be extremely valuable.
And speaking of, before we get too close to the top of the hour, I did just want to mention to everybody here viewing the webinar that Evan does have a special offer for using StoryOrigin if you're interested. So we can share that. But Evan, if you wanted to give some more details, and then maybe we'll get into some more questions because we continue to have great questions from people watching.
Yeah, so we should probably hit pricing. How much does StoryOrigin cost? It does so many different things. StoryOrigin is $10 a month or $100 per year. And that is for all of the features. If you tried to replicate what StoryOrigin does between, like I was saying at the beginning of this conversation, you have like 8 different service providers, like 5 spreadsheets, all that stuff. If you try to replicate all that, you'd probably be paying upwards of like $100 to $120 per month for everything that StoryOrigin does for $10 per month. So, yeah, StoryOrigin is a very good deal. And if you use the promo code audio24, audio all caps, um, 24 at checkout on StoryOrigin, you'll get 50% off of your first year when you sign up to the yearly billing plan. So this code only works if you're signing up to that yearly billing plan, not the monthly plan. So it'll take the price down from $100 for your first year to only $50 for that first year.
That's amazing. And we've put that offer as well into the chat. So hopefully you can see that. We'll also send it out in our follow-up email with the playback link if you're looking for it.
And that code will expire on August 25th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time.
You don't want to wait on it.
So,
Yeah. Take advantage of
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Especially when StoryOrigin is already a good deal. So that's a great offer. And then as we kind of wrap up with our last 5 minutes or so, I'll try and get through some more questions that are coming in. Um,
Yeah, lightning round.
yes, that's where we're at. So somebody just asked, what happens if you just signed up before you mentioned this code?
Just shoot me an email. Evan at storyoriginApp.com. You can find my email address on the homepage of StoryOrigin, or if you hit the contact link in the footer section of StoryOrigin.
Great. And also, somebody asked, does StoryOrigin take a cut of direct sales on my website?
No, StoryOrigin does not take a cut of any of the direct sales that you make from your website that you build through StoryOrigin. Lemon Squeezy, as a payments processor, does take a percentage of the sale. They do have a transaction fee. So their transaction fee is normally 50 cents plus 5% of the sale. But if you use StoryOrigin and you integrate Lemon Squeezy with StoryOrigin, I've partnered with them, so you'll get a discount on those transaction processing fees, where they will take it down to just 30 cents for that fixed portion of the transaction fee, and then it's still a 5% um, fee associated with that transaction price. And so if you look at other payment processors, like if you're evaluating, let's say, Gumroad or PayHip or anything like that, a lot of the pricing that you'll find on their websites, it's not very clear. They're like, we take a 5% fee or we take a 10% fee. They are excluding the transaction processing fees, which will still apply. So when you look at, let's say, Gumroad, they say there's a 10% processing fee. That is not including they have a 30-cent transaction fee plus a 2.9% transaction fee from the payment processor as well. So at the end of the day, what you're really paying when you make a sale through Gumroad is 30 cents plus 12.9%. Or if you're looking at PayHip, you have to add their percentage on top of those payment transaction processing fees, all that stuff again. So there's not a better deal that I am aware of than using Lemon Squeezy with StoryOrigin to get that 30 cents plus 5% total. That's it for the transaction processing fees and all that stuff. Yeah, so
Great. And while we're in the lightning round, does StoryOrigin actually send the emails?
no, so you would still send emails through your email service provider like MailerLite, MailChimp, etc. So you can plan the dates that you are intending to send your newsletters for when you're arranging cross promotions with other authors. But when it comes to actually sending your newsletter on the day that you said you would send it, you would go over to MailerLite, and that's where you would actually design your newsletter and send it out.
Okay. I think we've gotten through quite a few as we come up to the end. So is there anything else that you'd like to give a shout out or let everybody know before we wrap up today?
I would just say, again, my inbox is always open. People are always welcome to reach out to me. And if you ever run into any issues or trouble, feel free to reach out. So, and there's a lot of stuff that we did not cover today because StoryOrigin does so much. But again, that's where I would just point people to go to storyoriginApp.com and just hit those segments for whichever particular thing that you're interested in, and you'll see there a set of frequently asked questions that on each one of those pages, as well as usually like a video tutorial or demo of those features.
Yeah, the breadth of what StoryOrigin offers, I didn't even realize the full how much is available. So thank you so much for going over it as much as we could get to today. And thank you already for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one.